Wow. Welcome back to another episode, installment, or whatever of this thing that we continue to do. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I'm Matthew Leffler, the Armchair Attorney, and this program is brought to you by my law office, Armchair Attorney LLC. We help people navigate complex legal topics, whether they're post employment restrictive covenants or other things like that. News. This week, we finally received our trademark. Ta-da! Thank you for the folks over at Anna Law for helping us get the trademark done. Now we have a little R with a circle around it, and that's pretty darn cool. The background's changed. What you see here is a law library that's in my basement, though, surprise, surprise, I'm not in my basement. What I have done here is a green screen with a picture of the law books. These are the tools of my profession that are no longer necessary. Digital transformation has changed so many careers and so many things. And one of those things is how you do legal research. What you see here is the law library from a dear friend of mine, Timothy Dinan, a lawyer who practices criminal law, among other types of law, in the state of Michigan, outside of Detroit. These books are no longer necessary for the practice of law. Instead, we have legal research tools like Lexis or Westlaw or any number of other places. So finding the law isn't necessarily needed when it comes to a large library of books. Some of these books date back to the early 1900s. It's crazy to pick them up, hold them, and see what this profession was like so very, very long ago. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about today is what has been bringing so much stuff in the news about non-competition agreements. Listen, I don't like non-competes. I don't think that you do either. And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is still looking for comments on the proposed rule to ban non-competition agreements. This comment period will go on for an additional 12 days. I will link that comment section in the show notes if you are interested in making a public comment. Over 12,000 have been made so far, 12,000. But the numbers of people bound by non-competes is far more pervasive. Over 30 million working Americans, 1 in 5, are bound by a non-competition agreement. It is what stops you from doing that thing that you're good at doing. And ultimately, it means that there are less people to do the tasks and jobs that we need. The FTC estimates that if the proposed rule goes into effect, American wages could increase by over $300 billion. That's billion with a B. But after the comment period is done, after the proposed rule is finalized, and when that final rule goes into effect, you need to understand what happens next. It does not just happen overnight that everything stops. There's a grace period. It could be up to 180 days before it finally gets implemented. However, we know that the industry and the people who love non-competes will fight to keep them in place. The question will be, does the FTC have the legal statutory authority to ban non-competition agreements, to enter into the private contracts of workers and their employer? It is very hard to say at this point whether or not the FTC will ultimately be found to have the authority to do this. So, if you really do want to fight non-competes, and I urge you to fight non-competes, the path for you is to look at something called the Workforce Mobility Act. This is an act of Congress that is in both the House and the Senate with bipartisan support. That if that law is passed, you would actually have a ban on non-competes that would not be challenged in the courts the way that the FTC's rule is being challenged or will be challenged as time goes on. That is kind of the run of what we're talking about. But enough about non-competes, enough about the law, enough about all of these really interesting things that I find very compelling for all American workers. Today, I have a very special guest. I love Cathy Roberson. I am a fan of Cathy, and I urge everybody to follow her, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn, to see her content. Freight Forward is a thing that I consider for anybody in supply chain to be mandatory reading. Freight Forward takes some of the greatest articles from the Journal of Commerce and others and combines them into an easy to digest synopsis of all of the things that you should be aware of, because supply chain is all of the things. If you like something, it probably came on a truck. And before it got to the truck, it was probably on a boat. And then before it got on the boat, it was probably on another truck. And before it got on that truck, it was probably in a manufacturing facility halfway across the world, or maybe all the way across the world. This is what it's about, is understanding how things get to you and all of the different components that happen in that process. But without further ado, let me bring out my very special guest, Cathy.
Matthew,
How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I am doing as well as a father of 5-month-old twins can be doing, which I assume is great.
You look great.
I appreciate that. I have this. You're the first person for me to have this green screen, and I don't know if I'll keep it, but I do like the opportunity to try new things from time to time.
See, I love that because I was a former librarian. Okay, and when I was getting my library science degree, I took a legal research class because I thought, wouldn't that be awesome to help lawyers do research and go
We
through
need
all
it.
those books and such. So yeah.
Well, so I love the books themselves. These are like they're so, the smell of old books, the feel of old books, books that are designed to last. I mean, these are tools. These are the tools
Mhm.
that we used, but technology is advanced. They don't need them anymore. And I can imagine, like, what is Dewey Decimal thinking these days with all of the digitization of all of the things?
Well, I mean, we're gonna always need the books. I mean, backup. Come on, electricity.
That's
you
true.
know, your
There's
your
there's
computer's
an
gonna go
apocalypse coming
down.
at some point. There will be a time when we need these things, no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. But I tell you what, the tools we have nowadays, and they were coming. I mean, they were pretty much popular back in my day when I was going to school. LexisNexis, Westlaw, so on and so forth.
That's
Those
right.
were lovely, and they were so much easier than having to go through each of those books. What is it, Martindale Hubble?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it was such a pain.
Oh, and we spend so much time. Like I went to law school from 2007 until 2010, and you spend so much time learning how to research with books,
Mhm.
so much time. And then you get to literally any firm, they're like, we don't use those anymore. We use the digital stuff. And I get it. It makes it easier, but there is something really appealing to sitting in a dark room on the weekend, going through pieces of paper, touching them, feeling them. Like when I read Freight Forward, and I will plug it again, I print it out. Like I print every one of them out, because the only way I can read anything is to be able to take handwritten notes. Like I have to take notes, and I like to have it in my hand.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Thank you.
So tell the viewers, like, who is Cathy Roberson? Tell me about your, like, who you are. What do you do?
Okay, well, I mean, I laugh and say I'm a person that wears a number of hats. So I run a market research company called Logistics Trends and Insights. It's focused on supply chain because I've been in this market for over 20 years now. It's probably the only thing I can do research on these days. Uh, but yeah, I love research. If you haven't figured that one out, because before I got into this whole space, I was a librarian for a number of years, and yes, I drove that bookmobile. Uh,
Really?
yes, I did. I also worked on the bookmobile every time it would break down somewhere out in the country somewhere. So I learned how to do that. And I mean, yeah, I mean, my whole career path was supposed to become an archaeologist, and somehow here
That
I
is
sit
awesome.
today. Yeah, but no,
Well,
it's been great.
Well, I see like I see the trajectory, because supply chain, like, to know where we are,
Mhm.
you have to know where you've been.
Yeah.
And that informs where you're likely to go. So you have to have kind of a holistic view of all of the different components. So for 20 years you've been in supply chain. Like, did you realize that once you come into this, like, you can't escape?
It's
Did you
kind of like sucks you in.
That's
Um,
right. It absolutely.
yeah. Well, it was funny because I was a friend of mine was working at UPS at the time, and this was back in 2000.
Mhm.
And she was like, "We're getting ready to start up a new product development group that's not focused on packages, and we need somebody that can do research." And she's like, "And I thought of you, and I thought, well, might be a challenge." So I went and interviewed, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, sign me up." So because honestly, it was like a Monday through Friday job. And, being a librarian, you work the nights and the weekends. And I didn't want to do that because it was, at the time, I was a single mom and it was kind of rough. So, anyway, I signed up and did a lot of research, RFID way back then. Yeah,
Yeah.
RFID tagging, um, golly, financial stuff. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what came out of my group was UPS Supply Chain Solutions. We
Yeah,
morphed
absolutely.
into that. And I knew I was at the right job when I went to tour one of the warehouses one day, just because I was like, oh my gosh, everything has got a little place for itself. How neat. It was like a library to me.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, so I've been doing this forever. I stayed with UPS for about 11 years. And then
Okay.
I went to work for different consulting groups. And then I finally decided, I can do all this on my own.
Yeah, my experience with UPS. So I loved working with UPS. We worked with the former Emory Group, so the
Oh,
air
yeah.
freight folks,
Yeah.
and so and I found it fascinating. So UPS is like Big Brown, like the main, like, I didn't get to work with those folks because they were unionized and I was a non-union service provider. But for the UPS freight,
Yeah.
which used to be overnight, and
Mhm.
then for the Emory folks, they didn't have their own mechanics. So I got to go to these facilities, and how they destroyed equipment blows my mind. Like, when you have giant, oversized pallets coming off an airplane, thrown onto a flatbed with rollers. Oh, but then you say, don't put the forklift in the machine that says don't put the forklift in it, because you
Read the
destroy.
directions.
And then they just like, no,
Oh, yeah.
we don't care. We'll do whatever we want to. All right,
Well,
fine. That works.
it's kind of like on the parcel side, and maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I will. And one of the service centers, I knew a number of folks that worked there, and so if a package came in, handle with care,
Hmm.
down the conveyor belt,
Right.
up it went, toss it to the next
It's
person.
just a suggestion. It's not really mandatory.
Evidently not.
Like, so I mean, I get into this business. We talked about this before, but like, my dad was a roadway guy back in '76.
Oh yeah.
And like, when you think about this business today versus what it was like before deregulation, it's night and day. It's a
Okay.
totally different industry.
Mhm.
But these stories are still so fascinating. And I feel like that generation of people in supply chain, unless we capture those stories soon, they're gonna start disappearing. Like, what was it like before any telematics? Like, my dad would tell me, the first of the year, we all go outside and we count trailers. And like, oh, it's just like no, every single terminal, we are counting trailers because we have no idea if we still have them, if they're still on the books, like, what's happened to them. It's amazing. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
for you, and like, what has transitioned you from doing like in the research mode to becoming a writer? Because now you produce a ton of content for a whole bunch of people. How'd that transition happen?
Well, I still consider myself a researcher first, but the only way I could share my research is to write about it. And I laugh and say I am not God's gift to the writing market, but I say it as plain and simple as I can um, to folks. So, I mean, that's what it is.
And
And you're right, because things have a way of coming round in circles. Whether it's economics or what we're seeing here in supply chain world. There's a lot of repeats going on. So
yeah.
it's fascinating.
Well, I think that's a great point you bring up, because like, I fundamentally believe, and I could be wrong, there are no new problems. Like the
Yeah,
problems that we have are they're all the same, but we have new technology that can help address them. And
exactly.
for folks that are like, or I'd say maybe new in the industry, they've only been around since, the COVID pandemic, and they said all this money is happening, all this, everyone's growing. And it's like, wait a minute, like this is cyclical, like it will come again and it will go away again, because that's just the nature of how this industry works. Has anything like surprised you in the last couple of years from this industry?
Nothing really earth shattering other than the announcement this week with
What announcement do you mean there?
the FedEx.
So tell the viewers, like, what is happening with FedEx. So like before FedEx has a bunch of different companies, right? So there's FedEx Express, there's FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight. What other FedExes do we have to be thinking about here?
Well, one, just
Hmm.
one. Okay, that's the beauty of it. But remember we're talking about how everything comes back in a circle. They've known. Well, first of all, the way FedEx is set up right now is, like you said, FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight, FedEx
Custom
Express.
Critical, all the different things.
Yeah, so they're almost treated like different companies. They're very
They are absolutely different
yeah,
companies when you work
it's
with
very
them.
siloed. Well, they're tearing down those silos. They're connecting the dots, is what I like to call it.
Mhm.
They're becoming one company. They're simplifying their organization. It's what it really is coming down to. And they've known they needed to do this for years and years and
Yeah,
years. And finally, you talk about technology. The technology is there to do it.
absolutely.
The cloud computing, cloud and a number of other technologies that they can now take advantage of. It's going to be a painful process. It's going to be multi-year process, but they're going to do it. And my hat's off to them. It's not going to be easy, but there's still questions that I'm just like, what?
Well, it's interesting. We talk about FedEx. So the very first customer my father had with his own business back in 1991 was this strange company called RPS,
Yeah.
Roadway Package Systems.
Mhm.
And it was this strange idea. Like, we're going to have essentially a fulfillment company that's going to be non-union. It's going to be a lot of contractors. And they were following this idea of we can outsource whatever we need, and we'll keep the things we have to keep as our core competency.
Yeah.
So my father, very literal man, he's like, okay, I will make a company called Outsource Fleet Services. So if you're looking to outsource fleet services, you can go to outsourcefleet.com and you could find him. That was the business he started. Well, RPS becomes Caliber, and then Caliber becomes
FedEx Ground.
that's right. And FedEx Ground, like we had these captured facilities. So we'd be on their property in the giant shops. All of our logos said outsource. Like we were a separate independent company. And that's how they ran the business. And you fast forward to Amazon coming in the industry, and they're like, do we want to be like UPS or do we want to be like FedEx? We'll go the FedEx route. That seems a lot less liable. It's
Well, I
fascinating.
mean, that whole last mile has always been considered the most expensive part of the supply chain.
That's right.
It's the labor cost. It's the trucks, package cars, like we call it at UPS.
We had the bread
Gas.
vans.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
the thing was, like, people needed to get things, and there's only a few ways to get the things. Like
Mhm.
USPS has always been doing what USPS does, but you had these abilities to say who else can deliver. And for
Yeah.
such a long time, it's just UPS and FedEx,
Mhm.
and their business models, they're regulated completely differently. The way
And
I've always heard it, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but FedEx is an airline that happens to have trucks, and
yep.
UPS is a trucking company that happens to have airlines.
Yes. And that has infuriated UPS to no ends. They have tried a number of times over the years to get FedEx reclassified.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And they
And now,
have not been successful, it seems.
no, they haven't. No, not quite. But it's such a fine line, because really, what's different about the two companies?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think how they
Other
classify
than one
workers.
has a trucking division and the other one sold off their trucking division.
Yeah, that's right. So TFI, right, last year
Mhm.
spends $800 million and buys UPS Freight. there's only a few of these union LTLs that still exist. Like there's not
Yeah.
many left.
I know.
I,
But TFI, they've got a strategy to grow big, not only in Canada, but to bring it into here
right.
to the US.
I have a theory about TFI, who their next acquisition is going to be.
ABF.
I think it is. I think they have what 4 or 5% share of the common stock of ArcBest right now, so they're in
Yeah,
that
that's
pathway.
what I heard.
And then they've sold off, big ABF, not ABF, but ArcBest has sold off FleetNet, which is the old Carolina Freight breakdown company. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's fascinating to watch this stuff.
Do you think the M&A is just going to keep growing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what was we saw? Was it U.S. Express getting bought by Knight Swift? I mean, this is the time of deals. This is when you have these downturns in the market. What you then get to say is, I can buy equipment at a discount. I can get drivers at a discount. And this is what's going to funnel so many of these things. I think big will get bigger and small will still be whatever they're doing, but big is going to get really, really big.
Even with the interest rates, because the interest rates are kind of high. And that helped drive a lot of investments as well as acquisitions pre-pandemic and even during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think people are looking for better uses for their capital. So companies have been sitting on cash. Like, what do you do with it? Do you give it to your bank to invest in mortgage-backed securities, Silicon Valley Bank? Not the best idea. So maybe you say, well, let's buy companies.
End-to-end solution provider beyond your ocean freight solutions, like Maersk.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're right. I think there's an opportunity for some really interesting vertical integrations. And if I can control the product from the day it's made to getting to your house or your porch or your backyard with a drone, there's going to be companies really interested in doing that. I think you're exactly right. That's the goal for so many.
Keep it in the same network with that visibility. God, sorry for you.
That's a great word, isn't it? Best word in the world.
Gosh,
visibility, transparency.
That tracking, that transparency. Then you give your customers that sense of security.
Yeah.
Well,
the last thing your customer wants to ask is, where's my stuff?
Yeah. And they want to be able to ask that or see it any time of the day. I mean, they may wake up at 2:00 in the morning and go, okay, my freight is at this port. Yeah.
I mean, we see the value of this with Domino's. Like, you want to order a pizza.
Yes.
You know more steps of that pizza than you know about just about anything. Like, oh, it's in the oven now. I wonder, there might be a question here. Like, is that real data they're giving you, or is it just like a peace of mind? Like, oh yeah, it's in the oven now. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's probably accurate.
I think it's a great marketing. They're great at marketing, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing that American consumer wants is to know exactly at any moment where their food is. Like, what status is my food?
And it better be warm. It better be hot. Right. Yeah. If it's supposed to be hot. I mean, if it's
I'd be weird to have like a really hot salad, but I'd try it if it was designed that way.
No. No.
So I don't know a lot about the ocean world. So tell me, like, what I find fascinating versus like I think a lot of people in supply chain are surprised by this. Fragmentation for over the road is normal, but that's not the way it is for ocean freighters. Like, this is a highly consolidated industry. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I know more about air than I do about ocean. But so ocean, yeah, you're right. I mean,
is air consolidated similarly?
Well, it's not as much as ocean by any means. No.
Yeah.
I mean, because you've got Maersk, you have CMA CGM, you have MSC. Those are the three big ones. And then you have in Asia, you have Costco, not the wholesale.
Not that Costco, the other Costco.
Not the one with the T in the name, but it's just Costco without the T. And then you have HMM. You have a lot of smaller regional ones, because regional ocean freight shipping is rather big in the Asia market. I mean, it's a big continent for one thing, and there's lots of rivers flowing into the ocean. You have Southeast Asia needing support there as well. So, but at the end of the day, yes, internationally, yes, it is very consolidated, and they usually run in alliances.
Yes, I read it. Lauren Began helped me understand how, like, these alliances kind of work.
Isn't she great?
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just so fascinating that these big companies like, hey, let's work together and we'll use each other's ports, we'll use each other's manpower, and we'll try to compete with other people who have their other own alliances.
Mhm.
It just reminds me of like pre-World War One, like the alliances that kept everybody safe for such a long time.
Well, I mean, some folks in the market has, called it collusion.
Yeah, that's what they do if they're not winning. If they're winning, they love it.
Yeah. And yeah, I kind of raise an eyebrow over the word collusion because, a lot of folks will also call UPS and FedEx a duopoly.
Until Amazon comes in, right? Like, how has Amazon changed how those two organizations behave? Like, is Amazon big enough now where they look at them and say that's a bona fide competitor, or they say that's a partner? They have to get access to our capacity, and we'll give them the capacity that we feel like we want to give them.
I'm probably go against what a lot of people say here, believe, but I mean, Amazon is a partner of UPS's. It's gotten to the point though that about 11% of UPS's annual revenue comes from Amazon.
Ooh.
That's scary.
Yeah, that keeps people up at night.
So they've been working down that agreement, and supposedly it's mutually agreed upon. But whatever the case, UPS is aware of that. They're working it down. Amazon is not doing the nationwide deliveries, third-party deliveries like UPS and FedEx does. So they're kind of like a Walmart where they're delivering their own stuff first. Now, they are doing some third-party deliveries through Rite Aid.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so they are doing some of that. And yeah, they'll eventually get to the point where it's like, we got space in the back of our van.
Yeah,
we
let's
some more
some
packages
capacity.
in. They're doing it with air, their air.
That's right.
They're moving some of the post office mail and parcel.
Wow. That's fascinating. I mean, that's what's so interesting is like watching how these companies that have been around forever have to navigate these new people they really didn't anticipate. You mentioned Walmart. Like, how does Walmart think about this incredible work? Because I see them getting more into final mile. They want to deliver things. They partner with autonomous truck manufacturers. What's going on? What do you think about Walmart in this crazy environment?
It's so funny. So many people wrote them off. They're like, they can't compete against Amazon. That's all I kept hearing. And I'm like, you watch them. They will come through. And they have, because they've had the money to make all these investments.
Yeah, but that's true.
They have their own last mile delivery service. But it's all that. It's the gig worker.
So it is a gig? I thought it was so it's not W-2? Interesting. And so they're following the FedEx and Amazon kind of ish mile, like the we're not going to pay you benefits type of relationship.
Yeah, it's like, well, and me as a potential delivery person, I could see, oh, look, they have an opening at 2:00. I can make a few deliveries for them.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah. So it's called Spark. And
I'm going to research. I've not heard anything about this. This is fascinating.
Oh, you have not been reading some of my stuff.
I didn't realize, like, I thought that in some of the markets that they're doing final mile, that they were using their own employees with like logos and outfits like from the stores themselves. Really?
They actually have tried that. And I think in some areas, some of the employees will do that, but it's not it's not every store. But no, it's this gig platform, for lack of a better, crowdsourced platform, kind of like a DoorDash, but it's solely for,
How can I sell my labor? Who's going to pay the highest dollar amount for my time and attention?
Basically, yeah.
Well, then they also have the drones. Like it might have been last year, I read a lot about like them having drones that will deliver products to your backyard or to your porch, or maybe your front yard. Is that going to happen in our life? Like, is that going to be a pervasive way of delivery, or is this just more of a gimmick?
They're expanding it. They are definitely expanding it throughout various states. And it's going to depend on each state.
Yeah.
Whether or not they can do it. That's the kicker right there. That is the FAA rulings.
I think that there's the other secret regulatory body, which is the HOAs. Like there are going to be HOAs out there that say, we are not playing ball. And Walmart is a tough competitor. But the one thing that I don't think they have the wherewithal to navigate are HOAs that say we're not going to allow it. Like,
Probably.
those people will fight with knives. Like they're brutal. So I think that might be a challenge for them.
But the drones, that's, to me, it's such a cool concept.
Oh
And
yeah.
the drones are just getting better and better. They're improving because a lot of them are able to carry heavier, more items,
Yeah.
for each delivery. I'm not too sure about the battery life. I'm assuming the batteries are getting better as well. I mean, you're not going to be able to make as many deliveries, and certainly, it just the cost. I mean, I think Walmart is not making a profit off of these yet. I think it's still pretty much, let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Can they get the market penetration or the customer interest in these things? And then can they commercialize that to a bigger extent?
I want to do it. Yeah, I'm waiting. I want to have a drone delivery.
All right, Walmart, you hear this? Cathy will write about it probably and tell you the experience. Well, I love like you bring up this idea of automation. So automation is not new in supply chain. Manufacturers have been automating things forever,
Yeah.
but what we're seeing is like in transportation, your biggest expenses tend to be a mixture of fuel and
Mhm.
labor. And so if you can solve one or the other, you can dramatically reduce the cost for the end user or maybe boost shareholder value. So the question is like, what should we be thinking about automation? Like I'll use the example of what I've heard with a deal between Kodiak Robotics and Pilot Flying J. So Pilot Flying J, owned by Berkshire Hathaway, invests in Kodiak, making autonomous trucks. And Kodiak's vision of the future is human beings take the freight from the manufacturer or the distribution center, bring it to a travel center, and then the robot grabs it and does the middle mile and then drops it off at the next travel center. And this year, we have a supplemental advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. Love that phrase, with the FMCSA for autonomous trucks for level 4 and level 5 automation when a human being is not there. What do you think about this? Like, do you worry about automation? Do you think it's inevitable? I feel like it is inevitable. What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree with you. I think it is inevitable. And honestly, I would love to have an autonomous vehicle because I hate driving.
I don't disagree with you. I mean,
to be able to sit in the back seat and read a book or do my work and just let the vehicle do its own thing is amazing. But I mean, it's still, you have to deal with each state as well. Insurance. Okay. How are you going to manage the insurance? Who's at fault if
I think it becomes like a product liability thing as opposed to a negligence thing.
Yeah.
And you have to make design decisions as to whose life you prioritize. Is the driver's life the one you prioritize? Is it the people in the public you do? You have to make a decision. You have to do it. Has to be coded that way.
You have to also have the right infrastructure as well. I mean, I don't, and forgive me, I'm not as much on this as I should be, but your infrastructure, your roads need to be set up to handle these vehicles as well,
Absolutely.
the right way.
I mean, I look at it and think electrification is compelling. I fundamentally believe electrification is a path that we have to go down. I would love to see the main power source in the background of all this being more nuclear or more renewable. But for now, it's going to be, hydrocarbons blowing up and all that. But automation will come fast, I feel.
Oh, yeah.
If the feds say, here's how we're going to regulate this, there's so much investment in automation already. The technology exists to do it now. It just can't because of the regulations. But do you think it creates more jobs, or do jobs disappear in that environment if you start eliminating some level of driver types of routes?
I think it'll create different types of jobs. Now, okay, so here I'm going to show my age here, but I remember back in the 80s with the growth of the personal computer. Back then, everybody was freaking out over the personal computer. Oh, gosh, it's going to take all of our jobs away from us. What has that personal computer done for us since then?
That's right.
Okay. We've got a lot of different types of jobs as a result of that. And I think it's going to be the same thing. But you also need to realize that the labor force, qualified labor force, those of the right age to work, legally work and such, is declining.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
so we've got to come up with something to supplement, to supplement.
Yeah, I mean, last year the big topic from the FMCSA was this apprenticeship program. Let's
Yeah.
let some 19-year-olds operate an 80,000-pound machine across state lines. It'll be a way to solve this driver shortage. I don't believe there's a shortage. I believe it's a retention issue, but
I think it is too. I think it is too. I mean, really, I don't know too many 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds that's going to be like, I want to go drive a truck. Hopefully, please prove me wrong on that. Um, I think it'd be fascinating.
yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, that's a good point because, like, in interstate, that's like over the highways, over
Yeah,
the different state lines, you couldn't have someone who's under 21. But intrastate, like in your own state, every single state lets someone who's 19 drive a vehicle. It's the same rate as a big one. I think the challenge has been, what is the level of training you're going to give to these younger people?
I know.
And
I don't know. I still kind of like to know there's at least a 21-year-old behind that big.
I'd be happy if we just like change them. And this is very controversial, but change the minimum requirements to operate a motor vehicle for insurance purposes. Like it's got to be, you have to have a $5 million policy or $10 million policy. Then you can do whatever you want to do. Because in that case, like if you do make a mistake, at least you can make the person who you allegedly injured whole. But that's probably not going to happen. I think the most common insurance amount is like $750,000. I could be wrong, but it's not that much, which is interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. But another area where the automation has been huge is in the warehouse.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Shout out to DHL Supply Chain. I mean, they invited me to take a tour of one of their facilities up in Columbus, and it was amazing showing off the robots and the different types of robots. It was like, it was great. It was all part of their transformational strategy thingy. And also basically labor. Everybody was hit with labor shortages.
Yeah, that's right.
COVID, and so many still are having those issues as well. And so these are to not only help those workers that are working in the facility, but also they can take on other jobs if there's a shortage of workers in those facilities. I think one in particular that I really liked was one that was they were working with one of their partners, Berkshire.
Okay.
Yeah. I forget. But it was a robotic arm, basically, that was unloading the truck.
That's interesting.
Have you ever had to unload a truck or load a truck? It's not fun.
I have done transloads with trailers using a forklift, and I didn't get to use. I used the pallet jack myself, so I've done very limited things. I'm not good at it. I know that for a fact. I am bad at doing that.
I worked at Kmart when I was in high school, and
yes, retail. It's all about retail,
isn't it though? And I had, that bell would go off in the back, and we're all like, the truck is here. So we all run to the back to unload the truck. That's a hard job. And it took us, I can't tell you how many hours, because, it was having to unload it and then go find the right spot back in the back.
That's right.
Yeah. This solves all of that. It takes pictures of each box that it unloads. And I think it could also load as well. So it reduces the time.
I love that you have experience in retail. So before we went live, I was talking about my favorite job when I was growing up was, and to this day, for the most part, was working at KB Toys. And I learned about supply chain from KB because usually it's like once a week, maybe every other week, I get a truck with toys. We unload it. We take them, process them, put them out on the shore, and then put them out next thing. But then like November starts coming around, like, wait, the trucks are like, it's like 2 a week. Now it's like one every day. And you just, the inventory keeps flowing. You keep selling. And it's like maybe a third or a fourth of our revenue comes in like that little window after Thanksgiving all the way up till Christmas. And like, then I realized, peak season means people buying things for the holidays. That's what it meant to me. And I just love that job of going through a truck, opening up all the toys, not getting to open them myself, but like looking at them like, oh, that's a great toy. And then put them on the shelf. Like that was, a KB couldn't survive in this world. It's too competitive, unfortunately. Yeah. I think everyone should work retail though.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, it's definitely an eye opener. I remember when Walmart came to town, and they came
Mm.
in right across the street from Kmart, and so there was price wars going on. So we would go over to Walmart pretending like we were customers, but we were taking
Yeah,
down prices. Yeah. And then we come
absolutely.
back to Kmart and knock off our prices by an additional 10 cents or whatever. So, yeah.
When I was at Best Buy, we did that with Circuit City. So we'd go
Yeah.
in, we'd secret shop Circuit, and be like, okay, what are they doing? Circuit fail, they fall down, but Best Buy survived. I mean, kudos to them.
Yeah.
I will say for KB, like people would say, hey, do you price match Toys R Us? We're like, no. Like, well, do you think you could? No. What are you going to leave the mall and go to the toy store? No, you're not going to. We're the only toy store here. You're not leaving. We're not going to price match. And I think that recalcitrance to actually be more customer focused was probably a bad decision ultimately.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Don't know.
Okay, so we've talked about retail, we've talked about automation. What is the thing in supply chain that we really should be thinking about in the next couple of quarters? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. What should people be paying attention to?
Oh, well, I can tell you what I'm paying attention to is the economic indicators. So, are we really out there buying stuff? Are we, the inventory levels are still high.
Yeah.
I mean, I go through a lot of transcripts, earnings transcripts from these retailers, and they'll sit there and tell you they have improved, definitely, but they won't start improving until probably the second half of the year. Everything seems to point to the second half of the year is going to improve. So we'll see about that. The other thing is the imports. Imports have not picked up because the inventory levels have been down.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, none of us. Yeah. So, to keep an eye on when the imports start picking up. Are we going to have a peak season for ocean freight this year?
Well, on the inventory side, like, is the solution for retailers to just discount what they have and get them off the shelves?
That's what they've been doing. Yeah.
Do you think they'll do that with baby stuff soon? Like maybe 6-month to 12-month outfits, maybe?
Maybe.
I hope so. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah.
I really need those discounts on clothing from 6 months to 12 months. That would be the ideal situation for me personally, just for me personally.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of retailers that you should, I'll give you the names that you may want to check out.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, the thing, like, Amazon's changed the way we buy. Like, what I love about what Amazon has done is that they have made supply chain a part of the product experience.
Yeah.
Because the other retailers, like, you just get on the shelf, you don't really think about how it got there. But the idea of getting exactly what you ask for in 2 days, then to being a day, and in some cases the same day, is just mind-boggling. That the work that has to happen for that to be the experience that you have, and it is something that I could never have anticipated when I was my days at KB. But today, it makes a lot of sense. And it seems like everyone has to rush to be able to do the same sort of thing.
Well, the beautiful thing today is the fact, and some of it we can attribute to the pandemic because we got used to doing this, is that we as customers have an option. We can have an item delivered to our house same day, next day, 2 days. Thank you, Amazon, for that. We could also go pick it up at a locker.
Yeah.
If we don't have time, if we're not going to be at the house, we can say, just drop it off at the locker at Whole Foods or something like that.
Yeah.
We could pick it up at a UPS store or a FedEx store. We could pick it up at the retailer's facility, store. We have so many options today. And think about the whole having to connect all of that, whether you're a retailer or a FedEx or a UPS. That's a lot. That's a lot of technology there to give those options. But we want those options. But at the same time, those retailers are going, come to the store, come pick it up, because the shipping cost, this last mile shipping costs, they're kind of high.
And there's no way to do any impulse buys. Like, the whole idea of the retail store is like, you get what you want. And then as you get to the very end, look at these little cars we have. Look at the chapstick. Look at the Carmex. Look at all the snack foods. You don't get to sell any of those things.
Exactly.
So I can see the omni-channel fulfillment being what you have to do, but do consumers want that? Are we ever going to be satisfied with the options that we have?
No,
That's clear. No,
No,
no.
no, we want more. I mean, and don't ask me what they are because I don't really know what they are at the
We need the
moment.
companies to tell us what our needs are, and then we'll
Exactly.
then
We
we'll
need
agree to
Steve
that.
Jobs back to tell us, we really do need that iPod.
Well,
And
I've been like just so I have older kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and both of them love Fortnite. They love playing Fortnite. And I'm not good at it, but I want to understand it.
Mhm.
And this is one of the most sophisticated like digital retailers I have ever encountered. This is a company that has a free game. It's free to play. But if
Mhm.
you want to look like Boba Fett, it only costs you $7.
Yeah.
But it's not $7, it's V-Bucks. So you convert your real money into pretend money, and then the
Mhm.
pretend money buys you the cool thing that looks like Boba Fett. And just the branding that they do, the
Mhm.
connections with other media companies, it is just astonishing. So I never really believed in like the metaverse or buying digital
Yeah.
property until I had kids. I'm like, yeah, like, oh, you'll be quiet if I get you the thing that looks like Darth Vader? Sure. That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah.
Deadpool? Let's do it.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Yeah.
Are you getting into the gaming? Are you going to do that kind of stuff?
No.
What about the virtual reality? What about the goggles? You live in
Oh
the
gosh, no. No, and my son has that, and I
yes.
watch him, and he's like, "Mom, you gotta try it." I'm like,
Oh, you have to. I would say
"Yeah."
it is an experience unlike anything else.
'Cause I see him in the den doing this, this bit,
I
and
get
I
my
came up
well,
behind him and tapped him on the shoulder, and he jumped. He was like,
don't touch me. Yeah, you don't know what's going on. Absolutely.
"Yeah."
I'll have my oldest son. He'll be playing it, and then he'll come down just drenched in sweat. Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm playing gorilla tag. What is that? You climb around as a monkey. I'm like, okay, sounds great. It's incredible. Like the kids, they can't be bored. Like that does not exist anymore. Being
I
bored, it's
don't
impossible.
think I have played a video game since Pong.
Oh my gosh. I play on my phone when I'm traveling. Like I hate flying. So you can tell me, like, I'm scared of flying. I hate it. It's terrifying.
It's fun. Oh, I love
No. Okay. So when I'm up in the air and it's bouncing around and
Yeah.
they say it's like potholes in the road, here's my response.
They're
I've
great.
been up there. It's just air, just clouds. There's no bumps. It's just air. So someone is not telling me the truth. And people say, watch a video, you'll learn. I don't want to do that. I'd rather be terrified.
It's fun.
How
It's
do you travel all over the place? You go to manufacturers and distribution, you go to conferences, all of these things.
Well, I used to travel a lot more overseas, but my passport kind of expired, and
I have
I'm
been to
waiting for
Canada
that
once.
demand to go down because I understand there's quite the backlog to get passports renewed. So I'm like, I'll wait on that. But
I need to get a passport. I've only been out of the country one time, and that was to go to Windsor, Ontario.
ooh,
That
okay.
was what
Love Canada. Canada's great.
I want to go visit more places. I just with these the twins, it makes everything so much more difficult.
Well, you got to bring them down here to the Atlanta area.
Yeah, well, you're coming to Chicago. Come to Chicago, right?
Oh, I will. I'll be there. I'll be there.
There's a JOC thing happening at some point in Chicago. I believe maybe is it September or am I wrong?
Yeah, in September, the last week of September, it's a JOC Inland Distribution Conference. It's a great conference. It really is. I went last year was the first one that I went to. So think of TPM, which is their really the pride and joy. It's focused on ocean freight, but inland distribution is on trucking, intermodal,
That's right.
last mile. I think I've got them convinced to do some reverse logistics stuff because last mile is never the last mile.
That's right. That's right.
Because I
There's
tell
the
people,
return. Get the
supply
stuff
chain
back.
is not a line. It's not linear.
That's right.
Okay, it's either circular or there's little circles along the way.
Wouldn't it be better if we just had less options of things to purchase? Like, wouldn't that make it just better if we only had like one type of milk, one type of toilet paper? Like, if we just consolidated the SKUs, wouldn't that be a better outcome for everybody?
Yeah, perhaps, but you know what? It would make shopping so much more boring.
I'm hoping like we just get like a 3D printer that prints out like a meat slurry that you can just have and gives you all the nutrients. Like, I take no pleasure in these things. Just make it simple for me. I want less
I love
choice.
the 3D printing. I keep hoping for that to really, really take off. So my son does have a 3D printer down in the basement.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What is he making?
I'm not too sure about that. I think right now he's doing little figures from Star Wars.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I always like I used to play Warhammer 40K. So it's these
Oh,
little
yes, he loves
figurines.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Oh, I
Mhm.
think I love your son. That's phenomenal. This is
Yeah, probably. I'll need to hook up and
Did
play
he play
some video
Dungeons and
games
Dragons?
together. Hmm?
Did he ever play Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, yeah.
Did you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
We should get a supply chain D&D set going on.
Wouldn't that be
I
awesome?
want Jason Miller to be the DM. I think he'd be a
Yeah.
great dungeon master.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I wanna be the wizard.
Oh, absolutely. I want to be like a dwarf barbarian or something. So I
Well,
can
of
just go
course
up there
you
and just,
wanna be a dwarf.
I love the mountains. Oh, the mountains
Well, I do
call to me.
too.
I
But
want
you
to
wanna
go
go live in a cave.
I do. So before we start talking, so this last week, my family and I went to the Ozarks, Lake of the Ozarks, Osage Beach, and we went to Stark Caverns. And I just realized that that is the place that I want to live, is deep, deep in the heart of the mountain, temperature controlled, dark. Ugh, perfect, perfect.
And like I said, bats.
I'll get the shots. I'll make sure I don't get rabies. That scares me. Like I watch way too many videos of people rabies generally, and I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love caves too. I told you we've done Mammoth Caves. In the Chattanooga area, there's Ruby Falls, which is really cool.
I will be in Chattanooga in August for a thing with the Tennessee Trucking Association, I believe.
Really? It's
Yeah.
an hour and a half from where I live.
We will coordinate. You should come because I'm supposed to be speaking about something.
Oh, would you let me in?
Yeah, I think I'm either talking about non-competes or maintenance. Those are the two things I'm really passionate
I'll
about.
reach on. I'll be going. "Woo, woo."
Yes. All right, we're gonna make this happen. This is phenomenal. All right,
Okay.
so what is like we're getting close to the hour here, and I have a couple more like final kind of questions for you. So as we look at like the next couple of months, like you mentioned, like indicators, I always think of copper as one indicator to watch, just because with correlates with construction, but also like new housing starts. Are these really? Is new housing a good proxy for the overall strength of the economy? Is this something to follow generally?
Yeah, I'm not sure. A lot of folks believe that.
Yeah.
A lot of folks believe that, and it does certainly hold true for like the Home Depots and the Lowe's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably. What I like to follow is like the PPI, the Producers Price Index, because
Okay.
you can really measure the cost that way. From trucking, messenger, last mile, postal. I find that interesting, and really just the general, and the inventory numbers. I love looking at the inventory numbers. Retail, I used to love the retail announcements each month until inflation got in the way.
Oh,
So now it's just
man.
like, how much of this is really inflation versus, I
That's a
can't
really
tell.
good point. That's
But
a really good point.
within the next couple of months, what we've got coming up the end of July is the UPS Teamsters contract.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it's very
interesting.
interesting. It's very interesting because the Teamsters, bless them. I gotta, let me, I've got a lot of good friends in the union and such, but they have really notched up that rhetoric of theirs. And I really, really think a lot of it is to drive more people to vote, either for a new contract or against it. The Teamsters want their members to vote because the last contract you had, what was it, 44% of those eligible to vote.
Wow, man.
That was it. That was it. And the majority of those 44% voted against the contract back in 2018. But because it was only 44% that voted, the contract got approved.
Man.
So John
It's
O'Brien, who is the president of the Teamsters, was like, oh, heck no, we're not doing that again. We're all going to go out and vote for this thing. And it's not going to pass or not pass because of a technicality.
Apathy is a killer for every industry.
Isn't it though?
And for every country. I mean, this is the thing, is like we just kind of get used to what's happening. Like it doesn't really matter. Don't get involved with it. And that's
when your vote really, really counts.
Absolutely.
And the time period is kind of scary too. So say the contract doesn't get passed on July 31st. they go out on strike. Well, peak holiday season begins in October. Retailers and others usually lock in their capacity promises or what have you, forecast with UPS and FedEx well before that time, usually May, June, July time period, so that UPS and FedEx has enough equipment and enough. Yeah, it's just to get them better prepared. So it's going to be, I think it's going to pass. I really think it will pass. It'll be real close, but it's going to pass because both sides need each other.
Yeah, that's right.
They really, really do. And but at the same time, I think like the folks from FedEx, even though they've got all this stuff going on, righting their ship, they're going after some of the UPS accounts using scare tactics. I know. I was at UPS. We did the same thing.
I put on FedEx for a last kind of second when it comes to like how they've dealt with like labor generally. I mean, we had AB5 was this big kind of quote unquote crisis last year. And I kept talking to people and saying, look, this isn't new. I mean, California's been like this for 40, 50 years. Like this isn't surprising. And UPS is not the same way as FedEx. FedEx gets sued every year for misclassification and they win because they know how to do it. So if these trucking companies in California, like, we can't survive AB5, like, yes, you can. Like, just look at what they do and do something similar. You'll be okay.
Yeah. And FedEx is interesting because FedEx Ground, those folks that come to your front door, they're not FedEx employees.
Exactly. So many people forget, like, same with Amazon. These are independent contracts, independent companies, and they sign agreements. They're big businesses to an extent, making deals with other big business. And it's a very interesting innovation.
Exactly.
It really
is. Buy your route, you manage your route. It could be the Atlanta metro area or something like that. But those folks that are buying those routes have to adhere to a list of requirements from FedEx. Right.
Yeah. Decal your truck this way. Make sure that your people wear this uniform, have this technology. I fundamentally think that the greatest innovation in supply chain in the last 50 years was the rise of independent contractors. The idea that you could say, you are going to behave like an employee, but you're not going to be an employee. Like that's amazing.
And that's what has always just crawled up and down UPS's ass. Excuse me.
They're like, how can we get the same result? No, you're not going to.
We've got the Teamsters. They're our friends. We love them.
That's right. I do got to say, I wish the model was more like UPS for everybody. I think that's a better model, but it's just not as cost effective. And
but it's fascinating looking at our neighborhood as a proxy. I know my UPS driver. He's been the same person for years.
Yeah.
My FedEx driver, it changes.
That's right.
They're always so nice though. They're very nice, except for the one time one of them decided to plop a big heavy box at the end of our driveway. And I had to carry it up. And I wasn't real pleased with that. But it still beats the heck out of the drive-by delivery company, whose name shall be unmentioned.
Just drive by and throw it in your yard?
Yes, literally. A car goes by, the window rolls down, and you don't see anybody. You see this package come flying out into my yard. And I'm just like,
the future of supply chain is going to be this connected systems, autonomous vehicles. Maybe they're shared by different people and electric.
Customer service, customer experience, because that's how they're going to differentiate, because we're all going to have the same technologies. At the end of the day, it's not the technology that differentiates yourself.
That's right.
It's how you're treating your customer. It's that experience. And if you screw that up, there's plenty other competitors that will be willing to take the place.
Yeah, there's a long line of people that want to sell you something, which is why I still say we should have less choices. We should all wear uniforms. We should all have the same food, and it'd be so much easier if you could remake the supply chain with knowing all the stuff we know now. I think that's the most reasonable conclusion. I really do.
It's so boring. It is so vanilla.
All right, Cathy, where can people find more about you and what you're up to?
Well, you can find me all over the place on social.
That's right.
I mean, I do have a job, but I do also hang out on social media, probably too long. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Cathy Morrow Roberson. Also, Logistics Trends and Insights. My company has its own little LinkedIn page. I try
follow
to
that one
post
too.
something each day. I live off of Twitter still, despite all the crap going on with Twitter. I'm out there doing my own little thing. I think I'm talking to myself more than anything
Do
else.
you have a blue check? Did you get the blue check?
Oh, heck no.
Yeah, same with me. I'm not going to give anyone
No.
money. I am me. I don't need to just spend that.
Exactly. And if you're not sure if it's me, message me and I'll let you know it's me.
That's right. That's how we first got to communicate. It was through
I know.
Twitter.
I know.
Well, don't go anywhere. I have to say goodbye to everybody, but I will just stick around and I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody, we did it. Another episode completed. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Thank you for following along with the content that we have. This conversation will be turned into a podcast. You can find it on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify under Armchair Attorney. It's got a little R now because we're registered, trademark, huzzah. And as always, we love to have your feedback. If you find this interesting, please talk about it, share it, and whatever else the computer machine tells you to do. And we'll see you here next week. Probably, likely, always. And then I hit the end broadcast button. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this conversation with Cathy Roberson. And definitely subscribe to Freight Forward. We'll put that in the show notes. It is a phenomenal combination of news and insight that you should have every single Monday to understand what's happening with our supply chain. Thank you and have a great day. And then I hit the button.